I'm David Ben Moshe, and I have with me Chaim Ben Pesach, and I'd like to discuss a media problem we have in this country. Well, it's actually more than just a media problem, but it seems like in Knoxville, Tennessee, 5 upstanding young black Negroes attacked a young white couple, out on a date. The man was 23, the woman was 21. And it wasn't just an attack. It was almost like something that Islam would do. They were brutalized. They were tortured. They were cut up while still alive. She was raped. He was killed. And then finally, she was killed. And these 5 young, upstanding Negroes were arrested. By the way, where was the Klan in all this? How come they just let this happen and did nothing about this? So the Klan is just a bunch of phonies. They're all talk, no action, if they let this go by. But the point I'm trying to make is this made local news down there briefly. It made no news anywhere else. A few small newspapers mentioned it. It never made national news. It never made national headlines. Now, this wasn't just murder. It was torture and murder. Now, jump to the Duke rape case from Duke University, where 3 boys were accused by a black stripper of raping her in a bathroom at a frat house party. And that was in the headlines week after week, day after day. You couldn't open up a newspaper without something about the Duke University rape case. And the district attorney there withheld evidence, knowing these 3 boys were innocent, that their DNA was not found and others' DNA was found. He didn't give us a word on that, and yet we all knew. We had a feeling she was lying and making it up. Even her friend said she makes things up, and plus she was bombed out of her mind that night. She probably doesn't even know what happened, when and where. But where was the media in this? Where was the media in this brutal torture of a nice white couple dating? Who would know, how would we know that 5 black hoodlums beat them up, tortured them, cut them up while they were still alive, and killed them? Why didn't this make the news? What is wrong with the media? What is wrong with us for allowing this to happen? Chaim?
Well, the news media hates white people, and I'm talking about the white news media. This is a self-hating white news media, and this is what they always do. You know that hundreds of thousands, if you look at the statistics since the 1960s, hundreds of thousands of white people in this country have been murdered by blacks? Hundreds of thousands have been murdered by blacks. And I don't have to tell you that hundreds of millions of white people in this country have been victimized by some form of black crime repeatedly, either having their car stolen or their home burglarized or being mugged or being attacked one way or another. The majority of white Americans have been victimized by black crime in this country in one form or another. And so we have an epidemic that's been going on here. And the news media will not touch it. The news media deliberately lies, just like Hollywood lies, just like all the television programs lie, and tell us that blacks are wonderful and blacks are civilized and blacks are educated and blacks are the great scientists and blacks are the great attorneys and blacks on television are always the great judges and blacks are always the great doctors and surgeons. I mean, come on. They changed the affirmative action tests for police, for fire, for civil servants. For civil service, they've changed these tests and dumbed them down 100 times already to make it simple for blacks, and still they can't pass. In California, there was a proposition on the ballot to eliminate affirmative action 1 year. Actually, they wanted to eliminate affirmative action. It only lasted 1 year because the Bolshevik court system in the end threw it out and said, no, you have to discriminate only in favor of blacks. But the voters of California, even though that's a left-wing state, the voters of California voted overwhelmingly to eliminate affirmative action discrimination against whites.
Yeah, what happened to Martin Luther King? Well, we judge a man by his character, not the color of his skin. Well, what we have is exactly what he said in reverse.
Well, those were all lies. Everything they say is a lie. Everything the so-called civil rights movement and the black leaders in this country say, every word out of their mouth is a lie. They're born into lies, they're illegitimate, they're cheats and lies, parasites, and every word out of their mouth is a lie. And I'm not referring to all blacks, but I am referring to those who support Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Louis Farrakhan, Barack Hussein Obama, and the other black white haters and Jew haters and America haters. But anyway, getting back to the story of California. So they eliminated affirmative action for 1 year. Now you have a huge law school system throughout the university system in California, because you've got all these universities. California is the nation's biggest state by far. You've got a huge population of tens of millions of people there, and you had thousands of blacks being admitted into law school every year under affirmative action. The 1 year when, because of the voters on the proposition, that put a proposition on the ballot in California, 1 year you didn't have affirmative action in California. It really was only according to test scores. You had to pass the test, and whoever got the highest test score got in, and whoever didn't. It was really a fair, racially non-discriminatory test, a real fair test. Not one black in the whole state of California passed the test and got into law school. The 1 year when they didn't have affirmative action, not one black could pass the test. Now they'll say, yeah, but there were only white subjects on the test. Yeah, like math and reading and science. Those are white subjects. True, the test didn't have basketball and didn't have subjects like basketball and chitlins. True. But not one black in the whole state, this is factual, not one black in the whole state of California could pass that test. Out of the many thousands who took the test, not one could make it into law school. And yet, so this is obviously a people, generally speaking, I'm not saying every one of them, we have Allen Keyes, we have exceptions, but generally speaking, this is a people that is uneducated, that is lazy, that doesn't learn how to read or write or have basic skills, that expects everything to be handed to them. But if you go to the Hollywood movies or you watch television or you watch the news, you would think they are the Einsteins and the geniuses of the world. They're the big geniuses of the world. I mean, this is just an obscenity. The distortion, the lies. And instead of learning from whites and from Jews, they should learn and they should say, wow, you know, these people are well educated. Look at the great nation, the United States of America they built. Look at all the great things the Jews created. Instead of learning from them, these jealous, nasty pigs, these filthy, jealous, nasty pigs, lazy pigs, want everything handed to them and make excuses about slavery. If you really were worried about slavery, then you'd hate the Arabs and the Muslims, because the Arabs and the Muslims have slavery till today. You know, Jimmy Sullivan wrote something great on our forum recently, and this is our forum. People should join our forum. It's the best forum on the internet. Slavery in America ended 142 years ago, and the blacks haven't stopped complaining about it. 142 years ago in 1865. Anyway, in the Arab and Muslim world, there are millions of black slaves to this day. To this day, they have millions of black slaves. If the blacks were really concerned about slavery, wouldn't they hate the Arabs and the Muslims?
Sure, instead they're joining the Arabs and the Muslims.
Instead, they're becoming Muslims, and they hate white people who, and most whites didn't have slavery. It was only in the South. But they hate whites in the North. They hate Jews and blame the Jews for slavery. The Jews had nothing to do with slavery. The Jews did everything and still do everything to help the blacks. They gave their lives. Schwerner and Goodman were killed in Mississippi. 2 Jewish kids were killed in Mississippi fighting for black civil rights. And by the way, when we gave them civil rights, we lost our civil rights. And you can't make a civil right out of a moral wrong. Remember that. But anyway, the Jews did all of this, and now they say the Jews are responsible for slavery. And they hate the Jews who do everything to help them. Even the Jews they hate, and blame the Jews for slavery. The Jews themselves were slaves when there was slavery. There were still ghettos in Europe. The Jews didn't have the ability to do things like slavery. The problem isn't slavery or past injustices. If it was, they'd hate the Arabs and the Muslims instead of joining with them. The problem is jealousy. Jealousy and viciousness. And it's about time someone told the truth. I know what we're saying is unpopular and politically incorrect, but we need to say the unpopular and politically incorrect things. Someone needs to do that. Join with us. Become part of a movement, because otherwise we can't save this country unless we tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Shalom.